Welcome to another episode of the Comics Multiverse. And as you know, my name is Chad Burdett, and I also write and contribute to the website Comic Watch. And we are streaming both on that YouTube feed and my personal YouTube feed. But I use both of them, one for the other one. But anyway, my guest this evening is Keith Dallas, and he is currently running a campaign on Zoop over there, which is run by our good friend Jordan Plotsky, who we've talked to before. And so, if you happen to be watching, drop a question in the chat, and we'll see if we can get that answered or anything. Just let us know if you're watching. But let me stop talking and let me bring in Keith, and let's find out more about him and his project.
Hello, Chad.
Hey, how's it going? It's been a while since we kind of had a chance to talk. I mean, we have run into each other at both the Albany Con and a couple times at New York. So
yeah. Pre-COVID, I think pre-COVID with Albany, post-COVID with New York Comic Con. Definitely been a year since we last sort of had a nice sit down. So
and neither place is really a good chance to stand and talk and have a conversation about what's going on.
Right.
So before we get started, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your history as both a comic book reader and as a creator? Do you remember the first comic book you read, or maybe the one that got you interested and made you want to kind of pursue, doing your own?
So my name is Keith Dallas, born and bred on Long Island, and was part of sort of a neighborhood of comic book readers. That's sort of one of my fondest memories of this street in Nassau County is that, my circle of friends, we were all comic book readers, and we all sort of, claim. So the oldest, Rick Riggy, he had X-Men. He read X-Men. Scott Cass read Teen Titans. Flash was the that I was most fascinated with as a kid. I think probably because I was a really skinny kid, and so I wasn't strong. So it assured me that you didn't have to have muscles. You could actually be heroic by doing something other than punching people or lifting. So I've been a comic book reader since I think since my ability to read. And that's something that, still through college, after college. And I really started to, my childhood dream was to be an artist. I wanted to be a comic book artist. I realized I was a horrendous artist. There was nothing, I could not draw a straight line with a ruler. So I had to sort of give up on that. And I sort of transitioned over to, if I writing. So that's from, say, 10th grade on is when I was really trying to just hone my abilities as a writer. And trying to find my very first comic book job was during those early 90s when all of these comic book publishers were introducing there was the Triumphant universe, which was based out of Farmingdale. So that actually became my first professional writing gig. But then I started teaching at college. I teach at Hofstra University on Long Island. I also now teach at Farmingdale State College. And once that opportunity ended, took a while before I jumped back in and started to do some creator-owned stuff like Omega Chase, Argonauts with TJ Comics, and that led to other opportunities. I was also the editor-in-chief of Comics Bulletin, which was as Newsarama, not as popular as Resources, but it had a good it was particularly known for reviews, and that was something. Group of reviewers, and that going to so many conventions, and you meet so many people, and you expand your network, and that led to the opportunity to write Ghostbusters, where literally is the 2009 San Diego Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
And now, have you ever been to San Diego Comic-Con?
No, I have not.
It's a Tokyo subway. It's just, and it's been that way, I would say, since 2005 or 2006. Once once Marvel Studios started to have their premiere,
mm-hmm.
It's a convention floor. It's just a mass of humanity. So, I bumped into an editor, Tom Waltz from IDW. And he said, "Hey, we're doing these special Ghostbusters one shots. I need an idea for and these one shots were tied to holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I need an idea for like a 4th of July one shot." Right there on the spot, I said, "All right, the Ghostbusters go to a comic book convention and run into a demon, but because they're on vacation, they don't have any of their equipment. So they resurrect, or essentially they invoke the ghost of Jack Kirby, and he helps defeat the demon." And that was the go home, put together like a half a dozen other pitches, and send. So, Jim Beard and I were in constant. I knew Jim was a huge Ghostbusters fan, so I reached out to him. I said, "Hey, I need some other ideas because I'm racking my brain. I cannot come up with other ideas." And I said, "Look, whatever idea they pick, we'll just co-write it." So of course, Jim and I spend a week putting together like 6 other pitches. What pitch do they accept? The one that I came up with, on the Comic-Con. But it's funny, the what I like to say about because obviously it's a licensed property, so the licensor has certain restrictions, certain rules. So one of the first things they said to me and Jim was, "Okay, you can't use Jack Kirby. It's got to whoever be an artist." And they said, "Before you get any wise, no, you can't use the name Jacob Kurtzberg." Like, oh, okay, well, and it can't be San Diego Comic-Con, because my pitch was like, "Hey, you sell it. The Ghostbusters go to San Diego Comic-Con." I'm like, "How, and you sell it at San Diego Comic-Con."
Mm-hmm.
And but no, they wouldn't go for that. So it had to be some generic convention, and basically we stuck with the story, and it's the artist is just some fictional, but more than one reader told me, and Jim, like, "Yeah, that's clearly right." Yeah, I'm like, "Of course it's Jack Kirby."
Yeah.
2010, and that opened up other opportunities. Co-write another Ghostbusters one shot published in 2019 that starred now that opportunity was funny because so let me backtrack. Also, the rules that Sony had for Ghostbusters, they said besides the fact that you can't use Jack Kirby, here's the thing: the Ghostbusters smoking, the Ghostbusters can't be drinking, and you can't insert any dick. And I said to the editor, has Sony actually watched Ghostbusters? I mean, because that's essentially the movie, you know, they're getting and doing dick jokes, you know. So, but okay, so we'll stick to that. That's sort of what you, when you are hired to to some type of, licensed shop. I mean, you're given the rules and not going to get paid. They're just going to throw out your work, and so you just work within the rules. So anyway, so when we approached by Tom again, this was for it was the 35th anniversary of the first Ghostbusters film, and they did one shots of all the different versions of so the original version, the original rated version, the all female version, and the extreme Ghostbusters. So Tom said to me, we need, or can you write a? I said, sure, no question. Can I ask you something? Who are the extreme Ghostbusters? I mean, I had never heard of them. It turns out it was a cartoon, lasted one season, and so Jim and I just watched the most popular version of the Ghostbusters, but they fun, unique characters, and so with them was really was really a blast. I mean, I think I speak for Jim as well that. I mean, if would love to play with those characters again. I think, who has the Ghostbusters license now? I think Dark Horse, right?
So I think so, yeah.
So maybe when I'm in next week, so maybe I'll stop by and the editor and see if he or she is willing to list some extreme Ghostbusters pitches. But I mean, and I think should know is I've done a lot of work for Tomorrow's Publishing, and Tomorrow's Publishing specializes in comic book history. Out the Flash, called the Flash Companion. I'm the editor in chief of a series of volumes called American Comic Chronicles, which goes each volume a decade, year by year, to try to give a sense of here's what it was like to experience comic book history as it was happening. Nothing wrong with his approach, but piecemeal, just actually say, hey, if you were growing, or if you were reading comic books in the 1980s, here's what you kept reading year to year. And so we get into the stories, the creators, the public, as much as possible to provide history in a engaging, informative way.
And I think the one that you were working on when we first talked was the DC Implosion book.
Yeah. That's something that John Wells and I came up with, where as we were working on the 1970s volume, me, Jason Sachs, and that's the thing about the Chronicle series. It's not the product of just me. I mean, we bring in a lot of people. There's John Wells there as a fact checker, rewrite, and it's really a team effort. We have a lot of contributing writers, a lot of fact checkers, and so anyway, I was chapter, which is when the DC implosion. For those of you not familiar with the DC implosion, go look it up on Wikipedia. I mean, we would be here too long for me to explain the DC implosion of 1978. But I realized, I'm like, you know what? There's so much more DC implosion than what we're including in this volume. So I said to John, so I think this was in like 2017, where I said, you know, should do a book just about the DC implosion and have it published in 2018, because that would be the 40th anniversary of the DC implosion. We did it as a sort of oral. We were, you know, we pulled a lot of quotations from executives and creators at the time, a narrative, just using quotes. So when we put that book together, we thought, okay, you know what? The only people interested in this book are going to be me and John Wells, you know. But so we were really pleasantly positive reaction to it, and we got our nomination out of it, which was really a surprise. So yeah, so that's just been reissued, published in 2018, mostly in black and white, and John Morrow has it in full color as a sort of, with more pages. You know, we added more pages, so it's because that first edition is out of print.
Well, the reason why, you know, we're, you know, and like you said, I'm sure I could probably listen to you talk about the DC implosion, you know, for however long, but we're here this evening to talk about your latest creator-owned book, which is currently on the Zoop campaign platform, Riptide Sanitarium. Tell us a little bit about that project and kind of the inspiration behind it to start off with.
Yeah, so that again is something that Jim Beard and I came up with, where you know, once that Ghostbusters issue, I believe it was me who approached Jim and said, hey, you know, why don't we put together an anthology, but each issue is self-contained, and genres. You know, I think the one thing we agree on, to stay away from superhero stories, because those tend to, you know, I mean, DC and Marvel and Image sort of have the, you know, do a sort of self-published superhero story. So we sort of said, you know, let's focus on other genres like science fiction and fantasy and horror and, you know, things like that. And with the name Riptide Sanitarium. And so it's the type of thing that we go ahead and produce, each one of us on our own, and then, you know, once we finish it, we crowdfund it. Not going to be in store. I probably should emphasize that if you know, if you go to Zoop and you click on the Riptide Sanitarium, you know, preview pages, you know, you'll see that I believe is the first 8 pages. So you will be able to get, yeah, there it is. You know, so if you scroll down, you can see the preview page, that this really is a story about my dad. My dad passed away. He was 95. He was 95 years old, and, you know, he was in the Navy for about 20 years. And so by the time I was born, he was out of the Navy, but it was really, I could sense even from an early age that it was an entrenched part of his identity. Days as a naval officer. He retired as a lieutenant commander, which I guess for the military ranks, think Scotty, essentially the Scotty of like the Star Trek Scotty. You know, so and like I said, so that's not what my dad looked like. Juan Romero, who's a great artist, I didn't give him a picture of my dad and said, okay, draw my dad. I let him sort of come up with the character's look. Essentially, you're reading a tribute to my father about sort of an elderly man who has, he's his days, and he sort of lost desire to keep going, and he gets recruited for one more mission. So like even on that left page that you're showing there, that those are words that came right out of my father's mouth. So in some ways, this issue was again, I just sort of remembered the things I would say, and I'm putting it on the paper. It was difficult to write because it's, my dad, my wife described him accurately. My dad was a character. He was part Archie Bunker. He stand-up comedian. He loved his family. He did everything for his family. So he was a rather multifaceted guy. He yelled a lot. We didn't appreciate that, but so and what I mean, obviously I don't know how many people who are watching have elderly parents, but my dad at the end of his life was really having a tough time because he was so independent. He was so robust throughout his life, and geez, even into his 80s, he was doing like construction projects for I mean, we would joke that when he would come, I would have a list of things for him to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And he would fix all those things within the first day. And then on the second day, he would fix things were broken. Mm-hmm. And then he would, fix it. And it was just, he was a pretty remarkable fix-it man in that regard.
Well, my grandfather was the same way. Even when he in his 90s, he would, be out on his tractor mowing, his lawn.
Yeah. And unfortunately, my dad had a fall. He sort of hit his head, and they had a stroke, and he lost his independence. Did that, and he was essentially, and I were taking care of him, and we loved his company, but I could just tell that he just sort of resented having to be. It's not like he was bedridden and we had to like that, but he just wasn't as active as he was, and so I can tell, and we tried to. I mean, my oldest brother lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Again, I live on Long Island. Our sort of meeting point would be JFK Airport. We would meet at JFK Airport to, I would call it the prisoner. One time where I, took him to have him for, I think it was a week. And there's nothing that prepares you when you're driving on the Bell Parkway and your father says there are some nights, or most nights I go to sleep hoping I don't wake up in the morning. I'm like, ooh, you cannot say that while I'm driving on the Bell Parkway, because I'm about to, drive the car off the Bell Parkway. And so, as I hope is being conveyed, it's very personal, and it comes from my dad's sort of spirit. I sort of came up with this story idea obviously after he passed away, and I played around with it, and so I hope of elderly parents, or if you have friends or relatives in the military, because it's definitely both of those groups, to both elderly and to those who served in the military, and the type of, because again, that's my dad was out of the time I was born, but it was, he identified as a naval officer. So but
now, when you were writing it, did you I mean, it sounds like you put a lot of yourself and your experience. Was there any, I mean, cathartic moments for you, once it was finished or during the writing? That
Yeah, once it was all completed, it was definitely cathartic. I mean, I do have to admit there were some moments where like, oh, that was because all I'm doing is essentially transcribing what my father said, but it's like, oh, I mean, some of the things that he would say are heartbreaking.
Mhm.
Uh, but once one, the pages, finished, there was definitely a sense of I feel really proud of this. This is one of the uh, I feel this is my best work, and this is coming from somebody really enjoyed writing Ghostbusters, which I think we did great work on those issues. There's other creator-owned series that I'm proud of. I'm not saying my batting average is perfect, of course, but I certainly don't have that type of ego.
Mhm.
But this is a story that I feel really nailed it, and and I sent it to Ron Mars. I've known Ron for a time, and he's someone like when I first started out, I gave him a copy of Omega Chase, and he tore it apart. He said, "Look, here's what you did wrong," and
Ron is like that, and he does it because it's out of love.
absolutely, it's not out of why are you wasting my time? He's really genuinely trying to teach, and he's like, look, instead of this, you should have done, which is he could have easily just said, this sucks, boom, the
Mhm.
back of my face, but instead he spent an hour with me going through that issue, and so when I sent him this issue, use a testimonial, but only if you like it. If you don't like it, please, let me know, how to improve it. And he wrote back to me, what this is a really solid job on the Zoop site, where he feels, it was, well done. And I really appreciate. I also sent the PDF to Lenti, the, Marvel Comics, and he had some positive things to say about it too. So I said, okay, I mean, that feels good when two writers that I have a lot of respect for, that I greatly admire the issue. Like, okay, that's good to hear. So, and hopefully, once the issue is in one way, but again, I do want to say, reading a copy, you gotta buy it through Zoo, because it's not going to
Mhm.
be in stores. It's not,
Right.
we don't have so we don't have a relationship with the retailers. It's something that's you got to get through Zoop.
No, and I, having worked with, Jordan, who, is the CEO of Zoop, and talked to him, then this definitely seems like a project that, he you know, kind of,
Yeah,
that fits perfectly with the site. And I know that Ron is, like you said, really involved with the Zoop site and stuff like that. And so, I mean,
yeah.
but
Zoop's great.
so,
Zoop off the I my first crowdfunding campaigns were through Kickstarter, and obviously Kickstarter is a tremendous site. It's a popular site, but there's just a ton of stuff on Kickstarter, and just
mhm.
trying to get when there are comic book campaigns going on, it's really tough. I would say, through Kickstarter, I was only getting pledges from people I about Zoop again. And if people go to the Zoop site, you'll see there's only a handful of campaigns going on at any given time. I think
Mhm.
there's like 6 going on,
Yeah.
5 going on. Sorry, there's a cycle going by right now. So sorry about that.
Sorry.
And that's what's great about Zoop is that it's because Zoop focuses on far fewer lanes, you have greater visibility.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, half of the funds that I've accumulated are from people I've never heard of before,
Mm-hmm.
which the Zoop effect is that it brings your project to people that would not have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So I love Zoop. I would recommend it to other comic book creators. It's has a lot of advantages.
No, and having talked to other creators, and also again talking to Jordan, it seems like they kind of curate those projects that they feel strongly about, and if your project ends up on Zoop, then there's a reason why that it's there.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, for those who are watching, who want to crowdfunding route, what I would tell you is that it's work. I mean, no one. There are very, very few creators that campaign, walk away, and expected to get funded. Ron Mars is probably one. Ron Mars is one. Jim Starlin, I know, just had a Zoop campaign. He's probably people. I mean, Ron has been in the business for decades, accumulated a really large following. Obviously, the same thing with Jim Starlin. Most of us don't have, we have a following, but work. Crowdfunding is not something that you could just launch and think it's going to succeed on its own. You've got to go out there and promote it. Not only just promote it via social media, but actually bring it, because obviously those social media algorithms. There are people who have told me like, oh wait, well, I've posted about it ad nauseum on my page, and they're like, oh well, for some reason I don't get to see, because, and this is not news to anybody, you don't see every single post that you're limiting who you're seeing, so you got to go out and show it to. So it's work, and that's what I would tell people, that if you want your campaign to succeed, you got I really appreciate the support that we've gotten so far, and there are a few people that have already contacted. They'll pledge within a few days, which is great.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at it now, and it looks like you're getting very close to the goal.
Yeah.
So
and get to San Diego Comic-Con, and that's I'm going to be obviously getting in touch with there. So I'll say, listen, if you promise to pledge, where you live, so you better do it. Okay, that's all.
So, what are you offering for people who to support your project as the reward tiered levels?
Yeah, so there is the hard copy, or just a PDF. You know what? If you just want a PDF, I can provide it as a PDF or as a hard copy. I provide 2 versions. Adam Bennett Shaw provided and he is just a phenomenal artist. And the cover really just butter. And so I do offer a version where it has the Riptide Sanitarium trade dress, but I also offer a version, quote unquote, virgin cover where it's just Adam's work. Some people prefer that, but I also got some great. I mean, not only say Riptide, the first issue of Riptide Sanitarium, which the elevator pitch of the first issue of Riptide Sanitarium meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's my elevator pitch. So I also have, the Extreme Ghostbusters issue that Jim and I, worked on, as well. Some of my other creator-owned work. So, if you keep scrolling down there, Kramer is, one of my best friends, and he together. He's never actually put together a. I said, hey, why don't we also use this campaign to advertise that and to collect funds to print your convention sketchbook. So also there's, for the first Don had drawn this Black Adam commission, because it was when doing the first campaign is when the Black Adam movie. So we raffled that off as essentially as a prize. So anyone who had contributed to the first campaign, we raffled that off. This time I said, you know what, actually, and Don obviously agreed to this, you can buy to win a commission of any character you want, any comic book character, I should say, that you want drawn by Don, artist, and you'll see just phenomenal artist and a great guy. As great of an artist he is, he's even better person. Really, genuinely, one of my best friends. So that is pretty exciting. And listen, $5 for are getting more and more. I mean, again, I was looking at the prices for San Diego. They're out of my price range, so
they're way out of my price range. And when I first was going to New York Con, it's like walking down Artist Alley, and I would find somebody whose art I liked. I said, my thing was taking a DC character and a Simpsons character and mashing them up.
That's fun. That's a cool idea. That's a cool idea. Yeah.
And,
so Don,
I feel that things have I'm priced out of giving original art anymore.
probably understand. I mean, artists, some of them have to pay for the table, they have to pay for their hotel, they have to pay for if they're flying. I mean, they're and a lot of them, they just do be drawing all weekend long, so they set a price that works for them. And I Don typically charges between $200 and $350 for a really beautiful commission. And here's a chance, a $5 raffle gives you cost $250 to $300. Again, it's whatever comic book character you want him to draw.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a pretty cool reward add-on. The other funny story about Don is, so he wanted to draw like a variant cover. Had painted, and he said, "Yeah, I can't beat that." He said, "Let's come up with a different idea." And again, artist. So I'm really glad that I was able to, get him to provide the covers. So, and hopefully I can continue to convince him to keep providing covers, because it's work. Because that's another, add-on. We have a prints of that you can buy. So I mean, there's several different things are attractive to anyone who actually looks at the campaign.
So, looking at the kind of the bigger picture of your writing career, how do you feel you've grown as a writer? I mean, you've already talked about how Ron has shown that you've grown as a writer.
Yeah.
How do you personally feel that you've grown as a writer, and what advice would you have for a younger you or a less experienced you?
The experience for the younger me and basically for anyone is sort of, there are certain, like, I'm not a writer of superhero stories, and I sort of, that as the years went on, that it's sort of like, that's just not my wheelhouse. I guess that's your wheelhouse, and stick to your wheelhouse. So if you're great at writing horror stories, perfect. You don't have to be a trades, that it's not that this would ever happen, but if DC Comics, contacted me and said, "Hey, we want you to write Superman," I'd be like, I have no idea what to do with Superman. Go back to Jeff Johns. He knows what to do with Superman. Go back to Mark Waid. He knows what to do with Superman. I don't know what to do with Superman. But if, say, Dark, you know what? Would you be interested in writing more Ghostbusters? That I can do.
Yeah.
There are licensed properties where I can, easily find, ideas and pitch them. And, I think they would be solid ideas. So I guess if I'm making sense, hopefully I'm not rambling here, find your wheelhouse and stick to that.
Okay.
Trying to get work, anywhere you can. I was, for instance, one of Stan Lee's ghostwriters, where an editor, a Dynamite entertainment editor. This was actually at New York Comic Con. Ghostbusters opportunity was at San Diego Comic Con. Stan Lee opportunity, and he basically said, can you write prose in Stan Lee's voice? Stan Lee's voice is pretty easy. And I said, yeah, why? What are you thinking of? And he described that, Stan Lee had these how-to books, comic books, Stan Lee's how to write comic books, Stan Lee's, and it's really for an adolescent reader. So I was, and it was good money. I'll say that. It was basically writing chapters in Stan Lee's voice. One of his ghostwriters. Did I ever meet Stan Lee? No. Did I ever have any contact with Stan Lee during these assignments? No. So the editor, but initially that was surprising to me. I'm like, wait a minute, if I'm in contact with Stan Lee, how do I know what to write? And the editor said, 14-year-old. Oh, so you want really basic? Okay, fine. Okay, I got it now. And it was just, I was essentially all the information I needed to be able to, do. And so, obviously, to any budding writer, like you obviously, when that present themselves, you want to find ways to do them. You want to seize these opportunities, particularly if they're paying opportunities, and make sure to your best, but at the same time recognize if you're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, there have been opportunities where I've just said, no, I can't. It was either going to be too much work, for the pay that was being provided, and I said, yeah, no, sorry, that's not for me. So that's sort of the long-winded for me and to anyone else looking at writing.
So as we kind of wrap up here, is there anything else you wanted to mention about the book, the campaign, that maybe we didn't discuss?
No, I think I hit it. And like I said, it was a really that I wrote as a way to pay tribute to my father, as a way to keep his life. I mean, what I intend to do at the end of the issue is have an essay about my father, include some photos of him when he was in the Navy, and just sort of describe who he was. And I'm hoping that's something that's not just, say, anyone who is interested in someone. My dad was, and this I didn't know until near life. He was technically a Korean War veteran.
Mm.
And I said, "What did you? Were you in some? I'd never heard of any naval battles during the Korean War." He said, "No. I was part of. I was delivering. I was delivering arms. I was on." So he said that, and he didn't really talk about that until the very, very end of his life. He said, like, yeah, I guess they've classified. Like, wow. I'm like, that's pretty cool. So, but yeah.
So how about you kind of give us one last pitch for the campaign where people can find you and
So yeah, if my own website, which is keithdallas.com, Keith Dallas, looking over work and what I've done over the years. It's zoop.gg. I think if you do like zoop.com, you're not going to get to the right site. So you got to go zoop.gg.
Yep.
And you'll see again a button or a tab for Riptide Sanitarium. And again, it's a self-contained story. It's a 20-page story. It doesn't continue into another issue, so you don't have to worry about having to buy another issue to finish the story. The story is self-contained, and it's again about an elderly veteran who gets called for one final mission. So it's technically the genre is science fiction, but it's also human missions, and that's why I appreciate what Ron Mars said about the issue, is that it's got some genuine human emotion to it, and I think people can relate to how this character feels as he nears the end of his life. So I'm eager to hear what.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time this evening to chat with you. It's always great catching up to you, even if it's just kind of saying hi, on the convention floor. And we will be continue to follow Riptide Sanitarium over on our weekly crowdfunding roundup on comicwatch.com, which posts every Saturday at noon. And this week, this interview will be included with that. And it was a pleasure having you, and I want to thank you. And be in touch. And if at any time, you have anything else you'd like to talk about, then I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I guess talk about the DC implosion. You could certainly have me back on for that. So
Oh, I know a couple people, especially my co-host on our regular weekly show, who would probably be interested in that. So we'll have to chat and set that up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love talking about the DC implosion. So.
All right. Well, again, thank you. Have a great night. Stay cool. I know it's
it's July on Long Island. There is no staying cool.
Yeah. Well, I when I get back up into the Albany area, it's going to be, we'll be right there with you in the sun. Yeah. So. Yeah. All right. Well, will I see you in New York this year?
Probably. What I've learned with New York Comic Con, because again, I teach at Hofstra State College, and whenever Comic Con, it just sets me back my semester, and I never recover, and I just get so far behind. Earned as much. I mean that the convention's essentially in my back. But I'd probably see you more. I'm more likely to see you in, and I'm going to see you in my.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much. Have a great evening, and it was great catching up and hearing about your project.